Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Kim and I am a senior quality engineer. I have over 13 years of experience in QA and I have been on the job market a couple times now I've been on the job market a few times since 2020 and had to weather the storm in particular over the past year. So this video is all about job searching tips for the QA space, just based on things that I have experienced, things that work well for me, and things that I would suggest to anyone in the space looking for a job. It doesn't matter if you are completely new and you're trying to get your first job in QA, if you were laid off and you are trying to find your next position, or if you're currently employed and you're just on the market trying to get a new position. Hopefully all these tips help you. These are all tips that helped me. I've searched for jobs twice now over the past year. I did recently switch jobs about a month ago, and some of these are tips that I used in my most recent job search. And some of these are tips that I used when I was laid off to just kind of help me find the position that I got last year. So without any more rambling, let's get started. First tip for job searching is to update your resume. If you have not updated your resume and you are not using the simplistic format on your resume, that should be your first step. I'm just gonna give you my honest opinions of resumes that I look at and resumes that I got traction on. You should have a one-page resume, 2 pages absolutely max. If you have not had more than 4 positions, your resume should not be over a page. Get rid of all of the fancy formatting, the funny text, your pictures, emoticons. Get rid of all that stuff and just keep it text. It should be very, very simple. If you look up on Google, like simple software engineering resume, it's gonna give you a very simple one. And there's a reason why it's simple, right? You don't need all the extra fluff. You don't need anything that's going to break up when it gets uploaded, anything like that. So keep it simple, use simple fonts. Shouldn't be over 2 pages if you have over 10 years of experience or you've worked at over 4 or 5 different companies. Your bullet points should not be longer than 3 lines. I'll be honest, I'll say it shouldn't be over 2 lines. And you shouldn't have more than 4 bullet points, maybe 5. That's a lot to condense down into 1 page. I know, trust me, I've got a lot of experience. But if you can condense everything down into 4 bullet points on 1 page, it is going to be a lot easier for whoever is fielding your resumes to get a good idea and not have to cut through a bunch of like filler words or like buzzwords, things like that. Other things to cut from your resume, you don't need a skills section. You should be able to demonstrate in your bullet points what your skills are. So instead of listing like certain technologies or frameworks or I have leadership skills, demonstrate that in a experienced bullet point. For example, I led X project using Y platform and frameworks to enhance Z at the company in, I don't know, Epsilon tool. Right? So that's an example of how to incorporate your leadership skills, the frameworks you use, your proficiency. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Get rid of all that extra stuff. You should be able to demonstrate that you've used a tool in your actual experience. Super vague bullet points don't help anyone. So to say I helped increase test case coverage through test planning is super vague. What tool did you use? What kind of test cases did you write? Like, what kind of platform were you writing test cases against? You know what I mean? Like, that is very vague. So if you can demonstrate your proficiency in being able to use the things that you say you know how to use in your skills section, you can completely remove your skills section. Once you've updated your resume, make sure your resume has your LinkedIn profile. Now we're gonna lead into the LinkedIn profile. The next thing you need to do if you do not have a LinkedIn is to create a LinkedIn, get a professional looking photo. You can go in your backyard with your cell phone, set up a little tripod and a timer, find a nice neutral background, whether, maybe it's your backyard or it's just a blank wall, and just take a photo of you smiling. Once you do that, update your LinkedIn profile and just copy what's on your resume and put it into your LinkedIn profile. You will have your skills and those keywords in your profile based on your experience, and so you can better be found by recruiters. A lot of people really neglect updating their LinkedIn, and that is how I've gotten all of my jobs have been through LinkedIn, except for maybe 1 or 2. But especially over the past year, every single company that I've interviewed for, with the exception of like 2, were from LinkedIn. So recruiters will come find you if you put yourself out there. That's honestly the biggest key is your LinkedIn profile. It's not a dating site. It's not a social media platform. You don't need to post these, insightful articles and like participate in all these things. Like if you just keep your LinkedIn dialed in, the recruiters will come to you. Along with that, I've left a couple of links in the description of 2 channels in particular that have really helped me dial in my resume and dial in my LinkedIn. The one in particular is, I think it's Jeff Sue. He really taught me how to use ChatGPT to tailor my experienced bullet points and condense things down. He gives really good ChatGPT prompts to help take an existing resume and drill it down to have a more succinct resume. So definitely watch his videos. They were incredibly insightful and helpful for me. A lot of people will just tell you, go use ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is going to give you very robotic copy paste responses and copy paste text on a resume that just reads like it's not human. But if you follow the prompts that Jeff recommends and then you tweak them, it sounds more human and it really helps just get out all the fluff and the filler. So first thing you need to do, update your resume, update your LinkedIn. Next is to update your banner. I think this one's optional on your LinkedIn. I updated my banner to look kind of like unique, but make sure you have a banner up there. Along with updating your LinkedIn, make sure you change your URL to be your name because it's a lot easier to find. And when you've done this, you can add a link to your LinkedIn profile on your resume. And then that way it can say LinkedIn / first name, last name, or first initial last name. And that way it's a lot easier for recruiters to find you because recruiters will look for your LinkedIn. Honestly, that's like the second thing people do. They see your resume and they immediately go to your LinkedIn. They look at your connections, they look to see what you post, they look at your experience, they look to see what endorsements you have. So your LinkedIn is like super key. So there you go. Next is for you to turn on your open to network banner on LinkedIn. Now this is a very extremely controversial thing. For what reason, I have no idea. Turn this on because recruiters use it. Hiring managers use it. Your network uses it. If your previous colleagues see that you are looking for a new position, hey, referrals, that's how referrals work. They don't know you're looking if you don't say, hey, I'm looking. So don't be afraid of that green banner. There's another pro tip about the green banner is that turn it off and turn it back on every 30 days or so. Don't ask me why, just do it. Next tip is to not completely ignore third-party recruiters. So there are a lot of scams in the job search right now. For whatever reason, I don't know why people have to be terrible people, but there's a lot of scams. But there's a lot of recruiters who will contact you, potentially, for positions that are contracted or they aren't direct recruiters, like in-house recruiters for companies, and they're like a staffing recruiting company. Don't write those off. Some of those are legitimate. Some of them lead to full-time permanent roles, and some of them will open you to other opportunities and other jobs that you didn't know existed. I have noticed a very big shift in how companies are recruiting, and a lot of companies are getting rid of in-house recruiters and going with recruiting companies to staff. If you have had to do any type of hiring over the past year, you will know how overwhelming it is to have an open position and to look through resumes and do interviews. And so a lot of companies are offloading that to other companies, other specifically like recruiting companies. And they do all the legwork of filtering through resumes, filtering through candidates and all of that. And so sometimes you will find positions for companies that are hiring that companies don't even advertise anywhere. And you won't even know about those positions unless you are connected with other third-party recruiters. So third-party recruiters for companies include like Manpower / Experis. They do a lot of work for Microsoft and video games. Other ones are local. There's a lot of local ones in Portland. Cyber Coders is another one. So don't completely write off those recruiters. Now, after a while, you can start to smell the fishy ones, and you can start to smell the recruiters that are like gonna be a waste of time. I ignore those. And I go through recruiters' networks to see, are we even in the same country for one? Do we have connections? Is your company legitimate? And then go from there. So yeah, don't write off third-party recruiters at all. Another reason why you shouldn't write those off is because I have had a really great experience going through recruiting companies with their recruiters. You learn to build up a relationship with some of these recruiters, and they get to know you as a candidate, and then they will actually keep you in mind for future roles if one you interviewed for didn't work out. So, and it's worked out really well for me because recruiters have contacted me months later when other positions have opened up for those positions without even going through applying for the position at all. So don't write off those people, build up your relationship with those recruiters, and you never know. Take breaks. If you are full-time job searching right now, you don't have another job, you were laid off, you're just getting in the market and you have a lot of time on your hands and you're really trying to just apply for a lot of jobs, I strongly encourage you not to burn yourself out applying to everything. Don't spaghetti blast out. Don't just like throw your resume at the wall like you would spaghetti on a cabinet and see what sticks. That does not work and you will burn yourself out. I strongly recommend that you take some time to sit down and figure out what's important to you in your next role. Specifically, what are the top 3 things that are most important to you in your next role? Whether that's the type of industry that you're in, the salary, the work-life balance, whether it's remote or hybrid, what you want to work on as far as like if you want to work on your technical skills versus your leadership skills. I really encourage you to figure out what are your top 3 like non-negotiables. For me, it's not working at like a Series A startup, for example. For me, it's being fully remote, or my salary needs to be a certain amount and it doesn't work if it's under a certain amount just because of the cost of living. For some people, it's having, what's it called? What are those things called that companies entice you with that don't even matter because they end up laying you off or shutting down before? Shares. Some companies will tell you, oh, you can get, 15,000 shares and vesting options. I've never worked at a company long enough for my options to even vest, so that's not really attractive to me anymore. And for some people, it's like, well, yeah, it is attractive to them. So I highly recommend you figure out what are your non-negotiables, what are your top 3 important things in your next position, and stick to applying to companies that meet those top 3. You will absolutely burn yourself out applying to everywhere, always looking at job boards, like always just apply, trying to be first, and it's very demoralizing. And so I recommend you be very strategic and very intentional about the companies that you apply to and be on a schedule. Honestly, that was the biggest thing that worked for me last year, was setting myself on a schedule. When I was laid off, I didn't look for jobs every day. I had certain days of the week that I looked for jobs and certain hours of the day. So I'd say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm gonna look for jobs. I'm gonna look for jobs from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's it. I'm gonna look for jobs. I'm gonna apply for jobs. Other days, I would work on continuous education. So I'd look up Playwright automation videos, or I'd work on TypeScript, or I'd work on mentoring, or I'd take a break and just do whatever I wanted to do. But doing it every single day, all day, is extremely demoralizing. It's very time consuming. It's very mentally taxing, and I really don't recommend anyone do that. So if you are intentional about the companies that you apply to, you won't burn yourself out as much. And then if you take the time when you are not job searching to work on your skills, whether that's interview skills, technical skills, personal skills, soft skills, it will help you feel more prepared when you do finally get callbacks and recruiters to reach out to you. Interview skills, y'all. Listen. The job market is brutal right now. It is I've been in software engineering over 13 years, and this is the toughest market I have ever seen it ever be. And it is absolutely brutal. It is grueling. It is demoralizing. It is jumping through hoops that are on fire, dangling through midair over shark-infested waters. Like, it is so hard. Interviews have gotten a lot tougher than they used to be because there are so many more talented candidates out there. 10 years ago, there weren't QA professionals that really knew how to automate to the degree that they do now. Automation was not that big of a deal 10 years ago. Manual testing was, and now automation is. And now you have a lot more people that can automate. You also have a lot more people going to school for computer science. When I graduated from school with my bachelor's in computer science, was that 2008? There weren't a lot of, the tech industry was a thing, but it's not like it is now. And so when you think about how the landscape has changed and how the competition is really stiff, you gotta really be on it in the interviews, specifically the first interview with the recruiter and your technical interviews. You gotta really be on it. And if you are not studying for your interviews, and when I mean study, I don't mean like leak code. Some places, yeah, leak code, but you need to learn how interviews work and be prepared and study for them. You are shooting yourself in the foot, friend. I watched so many mock interviews last summer when I got laid off to prepare me for interviews. And I've been interviewing, since I started working. Interviews have gotten tougher. And in particular, interviews have gotten very technical, especially for QA. Like manual QA, junior QA, you're kind of expected to know what is a difference between a post and a put request, right? 10 years ago, that wasn't really a question. Now it's you better, that's a non-negotiable, right? Or if you are interviewing for QA engineer positions, you need to know how to automate, basically. You need to know what Cypress is. You need to know the difference between Cypress and Playwright. You need to know the difference between back-end and front-end automation. You need to know some JavaScript. These are all things that 10 years ago, you didn't need to know. And if you go into an interview thinking, oh, well, I can test, that's unfortunately not enough. So where am I going with that? Study mock interviews. Just go to YouTube, and there are so many mock interviews out there from dozens of hiring managers, senior engineers, architects that will help you feel more prepared going into your interviews with recruiters, as well as with hiring managers or senior level engineers. In particular, I am not going to butcher his name, but I'll leave it below. There's a hiring manager that does mock interviews on the weekends. So you can do live mock interviews if you want the practice. He does them on YouTube and LinkedIn, and he streams them. And so I really encourage you, if you especially are just getting into this space and you want to put your best foot forward, is to watch mock interviews and participate in them. Seriously, they'll also give you feedback on your resume. I don't think enough people really use the free resources that are out there for them to put their best foot forward. So that's a free resource that I highly encourage you to do to prepare for your interviews. On the topic of interviews, I think the biggest thing that has tripped me up in the past, of course, is the technical interview. Although I have a lot of experience, I'm not as technical as I would like to be, or that I would expect myself to be at this point in my career. Sometimes it just takes me a little bit longer to do some things, and sometimes it takes me a minute to figure it out. Some things I just don't quite grasp all the way. So, with that being said, there are some companies that do live coding. There's a lot of companies that have followed this trend of live coding. Some of them will open up their code base and say, here's our code base, write a spec that does this. Some companies just do CoderPad. Some companies do leak code. I don't care what, some companies do take-home tests. I am in the take-home test camp. I can do it at my own pace. I can use, Stack Overflow to help me figure out how to implement a function, whatever. But most companies are gonna do live coding. And this is my Achilles heel. I don't know a single person that enjoys live coding. I don't know a single person that feels like they did extremely well in a live coding exercise. I don't know why companies still do them. I know why companies still do them, but to me, sometimes it really seems no one performs like that in real life on the job, with the exception of pair programming, but you're generally more comfortable when you're pair programming with someone. So to put someone under a spotlight, under pressure, using a tool with no IntelliSense, and they can't traverse other test files to get an example of how to set something up, and they're relying on their memory, but they're also chucked full of nerves, is not something I enjoy doing. And I actually specifically now do not interview at companies that do live coding. And so if you know live coding is your Achilles heel, I've mentioned this in another interview, don't do it. I have interviewed at several companies since last year and gotten several offers for senior positions that didn't do live coding. When I say multiple, I've gotten 4 offers for 4 different companies doing senior level automation engineer level work and no live coding was involved. So it is possible. So if you know that you just don't do well with live coding, don't interview at companies that do live coding. You should ask up front in the interview process with the recruiter, what does the interview process look like? And if live coding is on there and you know that's like a non-negotiable, you will not interview at companies that do live coding, then hey, sorry, I won't be a good candidate for this. Along with asking about the interview process, another non-negotiable that you should figure out is how many steps are too many steps. So for some people, they'll go through hell and back to interview at their dream company, if it's Google or Meta or whatever. People like me, I'm a 3 interview and I'm out kind of person. Previously, I think I was interviewing at a place that had it was gonna be like a 3-hour live coding session. I got rejected. I didn't make it to that portion of the interview, but 3 hours of live coding? Really? I interviewed at a company for a government contracting, top secret security clearance company. They did one big panel interview and it was 6 or 7 people. And they were all get it out of the way. I ended up getting an offer, but I didn't take the position because it would have required way too much travel. But it's possible. So if your non-negotiable is 3 steps and I'm out, that's good to know going into it. Okay, lots of rambling here. Let me hurry up. Next step is to organize yourself. So I created a spreadsheet when I was looking for a job both 2 times to organize my job application process. Remember how I said it was brutal? It's really brutal. And if you aren't organized, you'll lose your mind. So in my spreadsheet, I list things like the date I applied, the company, the position, salary range, the link, and I actually downloaded the job description because sometimes they pull the job description down. And then I add columns for when I first heard back, first interview date, second interview date, and all that. And then I keep track of what stage I'm at, whether I've applied, whether I've been rejected, whether the position's been filled, whether I'm interviewing, whether I'm in the offer stage, whatever. And I just keep myself organized that way. Another reason why I do that is because for each company that I apply to, and this is also why you don't want to apply everywhere, I create a separate folder with documents for the interviews. And in those documents, I list the interviewer name, some quick blurbs about the company, kind of just organize my thoughts and be able to speak about why I want to apply, why I think I'm a good candidate, and just some general questions that I have for the interviewer because it's good to have questions for them. And then that way I have this document to pull up during the interview. I can reference my notes, my questions, and everything like that. And it just really, really keeps me very organized and targeted and on focused. I put all of this in Google Drive and I just kind of manage it as things progress with different potential companies. And it's worked out extremely well for me. If I end up getting rejected, I add the dates and then I just archive those folders. This is also really helpful to make that, I made a flow chart diagram of how many companies I applied to and who rejected and offers and all that. I can put it up on the screen for you to see oh, another job searching tip. It's brutal. And if you don't hear back, it's brutal. Okay? And it's not you. It could potentially be you, but honestly, again, you're sometimes there's 300 people that apply for a position. So don't take it too personal, even though it is personal because it's you trying to apply for a job, if that makes sense. But if you apply for a job and you don't immediately hear back, or you don't hear back after interviewing, it's hard out there. That's all I'll say. Another job search tip is to find smaller job boards. LinkedIn is my preferred job board just because I have a big network on LinkedIn. And so my network on LinkedIn is very large. So that's been my preferred network to look for jobs. But if you are very specific about certain things that you're looking for in your next company, for example, if you specifically want to work for a nonprofit, there are nonprofit tech boards. If you specifically want to work in the education space, there are education-specific tech boards. If you specifically want to work for startups, there are startup-specific tech boards. You'll get a lot less competition on those tech boards. Another resource to use is if you live in a city that has a large tech presence, for example, Portland does, there's small tech job boards like the Silicon Forest that post positions for tech companies in the Portland area. as well as like Idaho, Washington, and some Northern California stuff. So a lot of companies will post there and not post on other larger networks. Another job board to look at that a lot of people forget about is your state government. There's a lot of tech jobs for state governments. A lot of government agencies are running really outdated software, and they're starting to modernize some of those software. So look into your local state government offices and applications, as well as like local banks, for example, especially if you have like a regional bank. The last job search tip I'll give you, specifically when it comes to QA, is that I mentioned how QA has become a lot more technical over the last 10 years, 10 years, really the past 5 years, I'd say. It's become like extremely technical. With the rise of boot camps, I think a lot of people look at this as a shortcut to short circuit traditional education, which to some degree, I understand traditional four-year education is really expensive and it's not feasible for some people. So a boot camp is a better alternative. But I'll be honest, I'm in some tech groups and a lot of people look at boot camps like I could just go to a boot camp for 6 months and then get, a six-figure automation engineer job, which is not very realistic. And another reason why I'm bringing up boot camps is because I have gotten comments from people asking me about QA boot camps. I said it in a previous video, I'll be honest, I don't think it's worth it. I've never heard of a single person who has been through a QA boot camp that has gotten a job. I'll say that. Doesn't mean that doesn't happen. I just don't know of anyone who has. And with that being said, like a lot of these boot camps that are spinning up, similarly to a lot of these YouTube gurus that are having all these courses, are to make money off of you and not actually help you. And so that's why I'm really adverse to QA boot camps, because the few that I've seen just seem like money grabs for people who are looking for shortcuts, or for people who, I don't want to use the word desperate, but people who legitimately think that they're going to get a benefit from it and it's going to help them be more attractive on the job market, when really the job market is looking for people with experience. And a boot camp isn't necessarily going to give you that experience. It's not a replacement for experience on a job. To some degree, it's the replacement for a four-year degree, right? To sort of. A lot of people are looking at it as it's going to get their foot in the door and get them jobs, when a lot of jobs are specifically looking for people with experience who can do the things that they say they know how to do. And so I look at these boot camps as money grabs. Honestly, y'all, if I'm being 1,000,000,000% honest, every QA boot camp that I've looked at that posts their curriculum, you can learn the same thing for free right here on YouTube. I swear. QA terms? What is a test case? Fam, what is Wikipedia? Okay, automation, Test Automation University. Like, you don't need to go through a boot camp to learn any of that. All that stuff is free right here on the internet. I didn't know anything about Playwright 7 months ago. No, more than 7 months. About a year ago, I knew nothing about Microsoft Playwright. And the tutorials and walkthroughs and guides and videos and free courses on Playwright that have exploded over the past year for free is insane. So you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on a boot camp to learn Playwright when you can do that right there at home for free on your couch for $3.99. I get so worked up about this because I don't want people to be lazy, and I'm gonna go off on a tangent here a little bit. You can't work in tech if you're lazy. You can't work in tech if you have no drive, and you can't work in tech if you can't figure things out on your own. And if you can figure out, I have a drive, I can learn this thing, and there are these free resources, let me use them, like, you're, to me, gonna be a much more attractive candidate over someone who paid $3,000, $4,000 for someone else to tell them something they could have figured out on their own if they just took 10 minutes to figure out. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I feel about boot camp. So like, if you're trying to figure out, like, is a boot camp gonna help you? I don't know, is the boot camp gonna give you like a real world automation project upon your GitHub at the end? Not that it needs to give you that, because again, you could do that for free. You could learn a whole Playwright automation course for free at Test Automation University. Go spin up a GitHub and make your own test automation repository against any website you want to. There's tons of test automation specific websites with test IDs to help people learn about test automation. You don't need to go to a boot camp for that. Okay, all right, I said it. I guess the only other thing is, like, unless the boot camp is going to set you up with like a company to actually like intern for or work for to give you the hands-on real world QA experience, I just don't honestly, I don't think it's worth it. And people will probably be like, well, you're wrong. And then that's fine. That's just me. Show me somebody who's like went to a QA boot camp that legitimately got their career launched from the boot camp, and tell me a QA boot camp that taught you something that you couldn't learn for free on the internet, on YouTube, specifically YouTube or Test Automation University. So if you can show me that, I will stand corrected. But again, everything I learned about Playwright, I learned from the internet and just doing it on my own and Stack Overflow and a little bit of Medium. That's how I feel about QA boot camps. Okay. And again, I don't want to say like you're lazy and you're taking shortcuts if you go through a boot camp, but if you're trying to take a boot camp to circumvent doing the work to learn the thing that you need to be proficient in, I have a problem with that. So be kind to yourself is my last job search tip. Again, the market is really, really tough right now. It's very brutal. It's really demoralizing. You just have to kind of make sure that you are kind to yourself. You give yourself grace. Don't be too hard on yourself. And get help and ask for help if you need the help. I will continue to try and make videos about QA, things that worked for me, encouragement, I don't know, things I've learned along the way that I think might help other people. But as someone who's been on the job search market twice over the past year, like, it's hard. And this last time I job searched, I searched while I was on the job because that's the best time to look for a job. I will say all of these tips that I just mentioned are tips that I used last summer when I got laid off. I was only on the market for like a month and a half, which I was really, really fortunate to only be on the market for a month and a half. I know a lot of people have been on the market for 6, 12, 15 months. I think if you, are kind of looking for ways to like switch up what you're currently doing, hopefully some of those tips help you. I will say that like my situation with job searching is probably gonna be a lot different from your situation because I have a lot more experience. And I think that definitely makes me a different kind of candidate for some of the positions that I'm applying for. So again, if you are just getting started, update your LinkedIn, watch some Test Automation University courses. Specifically, I'd watched Playwright, maybe some Postman. Playwright seems to be like the tool that companies are hiring for right now. So like if you are gonna learn how to automate in anything, Playwright in TypeScript or Playwright in Python or Playwright in JavaScript. Get up your GitHub repo and start putting some automated tests in there. So that's my tip for you. I appreciate you so much for watching this video. I hope these tips were helpful. Please be kind to yourself. The job market is really difficult, but give yourself grace, take breaks, take walks, don't burn yourself out. And I really, really hope that you are able to find your next role in QA. Y'all have been sending me emails about QA questions and stuff, and I'm sorry it takes me a while to answer them. I just have a really busy lifestyle, but I do really appreciate them and I want to help people where I can. So if you have questions that maybe I didn't answer or you want a more like honest response, send them my way. I'm happy to hear that some of you all have actually gotten offers for jobs that you maybe kind of doubted yourself on, which is like really great to hear. So in the comments, let me know if you like are doing well and you got an interview coming up or you got a job offer or like whatever, like celebrate those things. I want to hear about it because I want to see as many people succeed in this scary, sometimes difficult world. So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you want to check out any more QA specific videos, feel free to check out any of the videos that are coming up next.